He's also known as Constantine. Please welcome Matt Ryan.
That's teen. Constantine. For us, anyway. Although I believe in the comics that actually he did, there's a couple of them where they did want to pronounce it Tyne, but we actually went for teen in the show. It wasn't my choice. How you doing, guys? All right? Good, good. Thanks for having me here.
Well, I'm glad to see so many faces this early on a Saturday. Thanks for coming out. I do have a couple warm-up questions, but first, how are you?
I'm good, yeah. I've been traveling a lot, doing a couple of these. Just came from last weekend, did one in the UK, in Wales, which is where I'm from. And yeah, I'm good. I'm very good.
I'm glad to hear it. You having fun at Terrificon?
I am, yeah. It's a great place. I don't think I've seen much of the casino yet. I went to bed early last night like a good boy, and didn't get caught up in everything that was going on. But it looks pretty crazy out there. Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, it's a fun place. There is a microphone right over there, so there's no better way to show your love than to get in line and ask a question of this man here. But I just want to know, when you were growing up, what superhero did you want to be?
I always wanted to fly, right? Who doesn't want to fly? And I grew up with Christopher Reeve's, I was going to say Christopher Reeve's Batman, Christopher Reeve's Superman and Michael Keaton's Batman. So those are my, like, two big superheroes. And yeah, I think the best superpower you could probably have would be to fly. Yeah.
It would make it easier to get to and from
much faster.
Wales.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah, all the traveling I do.
So what was your initial reaction when you got the role of Constantine?
Well, you know, I didn't really know too much about Constantine. I have a friend who in the UK who has a comic book company called Improper Books. And he was producing a movie that we were doing. And when I was staying in his house in a lovely little village called Stratford-upon-Avon in the UK, I was staying in the room where he has all of his comics. And he is like the biggest John Constantine Hellblazer fan. And I can remember him talking a little bit about, you know, John Constantine and how, like, it was his favorite comic. So I knew a little bit. I'd watched the Keanu Reeves movie, which I'd loved, but I hadn't read the comics. And then when I was auditioning for the role, I called my friend and said, hey, you know that comic book character that you love, Constantine? Well, they're doing a TV show of it, and and I'm auditioning for it. And he was like, right, okay, let me tell you a few things here. So I had a little bit of inside information from a fan, which was really cool. And I started reading the comics. I auditioned for the role, but I was doing a play in London, and I had really long hair, longer than this, and a big beard. And I was playing a Welsh warrior in a Shakespeare play, Henry V. And so I auditioned for the role. And I did a tape, which then they send off to the producers in the US. And the producers really liked me, but they were like, yeah, the hair, the beard, you know, can you shave it off and cut your hair? And I was like, I can't. I'm in the middle of doing a play. And they wanted to fly me over to Los Angeles, but I couldn't leave because I was doing a play. So they kept on having me do different audition tapes. In the end, I did about 15 audition tapes because they liked me, but they just couldn't convince the studio that, you know, I was the guy. And luckily enough, I think it was about 4 weeks I had left of the play. And they kept on coming back, do another tape, adjust this a little bit, and so on. And eventually it got to the point where the play finished and they still hadn't cast the role. So I flew over to America. I think it was a holiday. So I couldn't get my hair cut. And then a friend of mine was like, I know a buddy who's a hairdresser. So he came over, he cut my hair, shaved my beard off. And then I went through the whole testing process that they have for TV shows. And I got the job. And I feel really lucky because I think that from the time that I first started auditioning to the time that I got the role, when I was still doing the play in the US, I think they saw like 400 people. So I was like, oh, that's good they didn't like one of those 400 people. And then it was funny because at the time, my girlfriend at the time only knew me with a beard and long hair, right? And she was in Los Angeles with me, and I went to have my hair dyed and all my hair done and stuff. When I came out and she looked at me, she was like, "Whoa, this is weird," and she didn't like it.
So you lost a girlfriend, but you got the role.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And they just needed to see your pretty face. That was it. It's like.
But the funny thing is I did a movie years before that called Flypaper. And it was a US movie with Patrick Dempsey and Ashley Judd. And for that, I bleached my hair blonde because I was playing like this crazy British guy, bank robber. So we sent them pictures to say like, look, this is what he looks like blonde. But they couldn't equate that to the audition tapes that I was sending, you know? Sometimes you just got to be in the room and feel it out and stuff. But yeah, eventually I got the role, and I'm happy that nobody else did, you know? Those 400 other people. Poor guys.
We're happy too. I would say you are the definitive Constantine at this point. Wouldn't you guys say? Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, whether it's, live action or you've done a lot of voiceover work. How's it feel doing the voiceover work as Constantine?
Great. I felt like Constantine for me has been, in a way, it's like the gift that keeps on giving, like I did the first season and I loved doing that. And the funny thing what happened was they didn't cancel us straight away. What normally happens in network television is they'll commission 13 episodes. And then once it starts airing on the TV, they'll either cancel you or they'll give you what they call the back nine, which would bring it up to like 22 episodes or something. But for us, they didn't give us the back nine, but they didn't cancel us. So they kind of just said, we're going to wait and see, maybe we'll pick you up next season. And during this time, I was kind of in a limbo because I was getting offered some really nice jobs, but I was under contract for Constantine, and I wanted Constantine to be picked up. But it got to the point where we kind of knew that it wasn't, and they wouldn't release me from my contract. And there was a couple of like really good jobs, which I won't say because I never like to talk about the jobs I didn't do. But I was like, dude, man, I could have had that job, But they wouldn't release me from my contract. But after that, it was cancelled. I thought, okay, I was really disappointed. I thought, move on, right? This is the life you have as an actor. And I was just about to start a play on Broadway with Keira Knightley, and I got a call saying, would you like to do an episode of Arrow? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to. But I think it was like 3 weeks until we started the rehearsal for the play. And there's no way you can not be in the rehearsal room for a play and go off and do something else, you can't. And so they were like, the timing is right, because they wanted to shoot while we would have been in the technical rehearsal on the stage getting ready to perform. So they moved their episodes around so that I could fly in, dye my hair blonde, shoot all of my things, fly back to New York, dye my hair back to black, and start rehearsals. But at that stage, I thought, that's a nice little thing to do Constantine again on Arrow. I didn't think anything of it, the show, the character going any further. And then they asked me to do the animated movie. And I was like, this is great. I'd love to. So at each point of my journey, I think it's been 10 years now since I first started the TV show. And I think I've done 7 movies, 7 of the animated movies. But at each point, I thought it was done. And they kept on pulling me back in, There's a great line in The Godfather 3. And Al Pacino's character, Michael Corleone, says, as soon as they think I'm out, they pull me back in. And I kind of felt like that with Constantine. At every point I thought it was over, they kept on pulling me back in. And then I was actually doing another play in London. And they asked me if I would do an episode of Legends of Tomorrow. And so I flew over and did one episode of that. And again, didn't think anything of it. I thought that's nice, to get to play the character again. And then they offered me a contract for 1 year. And then after that, they offered me another contract for 1 year. And then after that, they offered me another contract for 1 year. So I ended up doing him for 3 seasons on Legends of Tomorrow. And then they wanted me to come back for the 7th season as John Constantine, but they weren't allowed to use the character anymore because Warner Brothers were doing something else with it. So again, I was disappointed. I was like, okay, that's it. You move on. And then they just said, well, stay. just make a character up. And that's how I ended up playing a wonderful character called Gwyn Davis on Legends for the last season. Well, turned out to be the last season of Legends. So, so it's been almost 10 years. And doing the animated stuff, I think I was one of the first actors to ever make that crossover. And to do like the live action and the animated stuff. I know that now, I think that DC are now trying to do that. So the live action do the animated stuff. But it was really cool, man. And I really enjoyed just getting to play the character and, albeit with your voice, interact with characters that I never got the chance to on the TV show, especially like Zatanna and Deadman and Batman, all these great characters that, we would have liked to have got to in the TV show, but never did. So I feel really lucky that John Constantine has just kept me pulling me back into his crazy world.
Yeah. We feel lucky too. Again, there's a microphone over here, so please, I know some of you guys have to have questions. Don't be shy, because I can talk to them all day, but, good, we have a taker. Ooh, 2 takers. Ooh. All right, these are the brave ones. We need more bravery.
Hi.
What was your most memorable moment as John Constantine throughout all the media that you played him in?
Wow, that's a good question. I mean, it's a long time, 10 years, I think doing the television show when I first started, with these characters that they're beloved by so many people. Constantine was created in 1985 on, I think it was issue 37 in Swamp Thing. And then in 1987, he got his own comic, and then there was 300 issues of that. And, when I was auditioning for the role, I knew it was like a cool character, but I didn't know how beloved it was by so many fans. And then you kind of look at it and you go, oh, right, there's a lot of responsibility here, And the first couple of episodes of anything you do, especially on network television, it's so fast. And it's a little bit like putting a car engine together when you start a television show. All the different departments are like different cogs in the machine, and they all have to work together for it all to be smooth. So sometimes, the props department gets changed out, and, it kind of, you work through it until it clicks. And for me, playing the role, the first couple of episodes, I was finding him. I always had one of the comics in my, whatever comic I was reading, I had in my back pocket. So if I ever got lost, I could just look at one of the panels on the comics, and they're so physical that they would just jump out at me. And I think that episode 4, A Feast of Friends, was taken directly from the comics. And it's when John Constantine ends up locking a demon inside one of his best friends, Gary Lester. And the guy who played Gary Lester was one of my best friends, an Irish actor called John Joe O'Neill. And we had worked together at the Royal Shakespeare Company years before. And when I found out that he was doing that, it was just great, because we had our relationship for free. And he's such a good actor that it kind of supported me as well. And that was when I really found my rhythm, I think, as the character. And I was like, oh, there he is. So it was about episode 4, I was like, now I'm ready to like fly with this thing. So, and I actually think that when you watch the TV show, the first couple of episodes, they're okay. But I think episode 4 is when I thought like, oh, it could be really good. It's starting to get, yeah, exactly. So for me, that was one of the most memorable moments, because getting to play with him, and the director was really great, because he knew our relationship and was kind of like, I'm just going to leave you guys to it, and he would, obviously give us direction, but he kind of knew that we had something, and that we would just jam off each other. And that was probably one of the first most memorable moments. The second one, I would say, one of the most exhausting as well, is the moment of putting the demon Pazuzu, when John puts that demon into him. And there was this moment I turned around and I was like, man, we had a real exorcist who was a consultant on the show. And the spells that he would write were real spells. So I'm like wishing this demon into me. And this is the demon that they used in, the Exorcist is the demon Pazuzu, and I did all my research on these demons. I'm like, this is a bad demon. And I'm really trying to summon him, And I'm talking to the guy going like, I don't think this is a good idea. But that was really, really cool as well, because I loved those 2 episodes that I think it was called The Saint of Last Resorts, Part 1 and Part 2. I really enjoyed those. So those are probably on Constantine, but on Legends, my most memorable moments are like of all the cast doing like silly shit, man. I tell you, it's just bonkers, that show. I loved it so much. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Make me laugh.
Oh, I think there's a switch on there that has not been pushed up.
Oh. Testing, 1, 2.
There we go.
Yeah.
Shakespearean acting. Is there a particular play or role that you absolutely love? Is it the same one that perhaps that's your ultimate go? I want to play this role, Othello, what have you, something from that Scottish play.
Yeah, well, the Scottish play is one that I would that I would love to do. What's great about that play as well is it's actually, I think, the shortest Shakespeare play. And not to say that, but if you read King Lear in its entirety or Hamlet, it's like a 4.5-hour play, and you're like, some of this just needs to be cut, But I love that. And Hamlet, I actually did my first kind of experience of coming to America. I did Hamlet. I played Horatio to Jude Law's Hamlet in London, and I understudied the role as well. And what was good about that was, as Horatio, I knew everything that Hamlet was going through because I was also learning the part. And me and Jude became very good friends, and we'd work on the lines and on the text outside of the rehearsal room as well. And I loved the role, and I thought, one day I'd like to play that. So there's that and the Scottish play. And then when I'm older, I'd love to play Lear, but you'd have to cut it a bit, it's a bit long.
Would you rather play America, England, both?
Both,
Vic
yeah.
versus
I mean, the
Broadway?
greatest experience I had, man, and I think I've done 25 plays or something. And when we did Hamlet in London, we took Hamlet to Elsinore, the castle, which is set in Denmark, and we were doing it outdoors on the ramparts, which was such a great experience. And then we transferred to Broadway. And there's such a difference in the audiences, to the American audiences and the British audiences. We had a real shock when we got to Broadway because, the British audiences are very reserved, they clap and they're very quiet. And the American audiences are completely different. In the opening kind of sequence that we had, like Jude would be on the stage standing up and there'd be like music going and people would be like, woo, go Hamlet, yeah. And we were like, whoa, they're clapping before we start. And, after we'd finish a scene, people would clap as well. And we weren't used to that. And eventually we got used to it, and it was great. And every night we had a standing ovation. And in the UK, you don't get a standing ovation, not unless it's like really, really special. So we felt really special with the American audiences. And loved it. And I actually went back to Broadway then a few years later to do another play, and that was great. The only thing that I didn't like about the second play was the rehearsal process, because when you do like a big play on Broadway, you only have 3 weeks rehearsal, and then you have like a bunch of previews. And they say, like, this is where you're working it out, but the critics come early. So if you really are working out a play and it's not quite there, you could get a bad review. Whereas in the UK, you have at least 5 weeks rehearsal where you're in a room working things through, But yeah, I love doing plays, as you can probably tell. Thanks. Hey.
Hi, I just wanted to say you did a fantastic job playing John in both the NBC Constantine show and Legends of Tomorrow. But I did want to ask you, did you prefer the grittiness and the darkness of NBC's Constantine versus like the silliness of Legends of Tomorrow? And if you could like a perfect Constantine storyline, like what would that be like for you?
Yeah, I always felt, once I started reading, after we did the pilot and the television show was picked up and I was deep into reading the comics, one of the producers, I met him in Los Angeles for coffee and we were talking, and I was talking about the grittiness and the nature of the comics, how they're raw and they were political at the time, and he's smoking and having sex, and I was just like, this character's wonderful, you know. And he said, look, it's not going to be what you want it to be. It's network television, you know. So we're going to have to choose our battles. But I think we did get the tone kind of was much darker than than Legends, and but I would have always liked to, you know, you look at shows today like The Boys or, you know, the cable shows, then you can do so much more with those. And, you know, I always wanted to like do a version which was like really adapted straight from the comics and as gritty as that. And also, I think that NBC wanted the formula to be Demon of the Week, but we wanted to serialize it. You know, and there's so many great stories in the comics to take those stories and tell. And I felt the best episodes on the Constantine series were the ones where he was personally he had some stakes in the game. You know, if it's just another demon somewhere, John wouldn't give a shit. You know what I mean? He'd just be like, ah. The great thing about the comics is half of the time he's running away from something and it crosses over him. What we started out with was him going after the demons, and there was slightly something not quite right about that. But towards the end of the show, we started to get the tone, I think, really, really right. And then when Legends came along, I was a bit skeptical about bringing the character on there because of the wonderful goofiness and the nature of that show and the ensemble nature of that show. Like, John is a bit of a, you know, he's a loner. Apart from the Justice League Dark stuff, you know, he's really a loner and likes to work alone. And, you know, he's not really the guy that will stand in the background waiting for something. He'll be off smoking a cigarette and having a whiskey. And I was like, how we do this? I don't feel he should be the guy that's always around the table, you know, like, he's not that kind of guy. And I just didn't want to sell him down the road in any way. But then, you know, I'd read so many of the comics, and, you know, John pops up in so many different comics anyway. So for me, it was like keeping the DNA of the character in the comics and the show that we'd created, but he's just popping up in another comic book, in another TV show. But, you know, the actors, we all had so much fun on Legends, and I had to work really hard not to have too much fun and to try and stay true to John in a way. And I think that they really did serve the character well. Especially, it's an ensemble show. You have to serve each character. And they really did try to bring in some of the storylines from the comics and adapt them, you know. And so I was really appreciative of that. And, you know, the one thing I always wanted really was like a HBO show, which is gritty, like The Boys, you know. It can do all of those kinds of things. And my favorite run of the comics is still Dangerous Habits. And there's that great scene when he tricks the devil by, you know, giving him a beer and it's actually holy water, and then smashes the thing across his face. I was like, I want to do that, like with Tom Ellis. That would have been fun. But yeah, but there's so many great stories there, and I think that the character himself, you know, whatever DC does with him now, I'm kind of a fan of his, so I'd be interested to see what they do, and I hope that they pull from those great stories that all those great writers and artists have drawn and written over the years.
And do you wish that they had added Zatanna in any of your storylines? Because I know they hooked him up with Gary at the end of Legends of Tomorrow, and it was kind of a choice.
Yeah, no, and I love that as well. Like with what they did on Legends, you know, and then they were limited to what characters could be brought on and stuff. And I think that, you know, it was great that they were allowed to get John Constantine on that show. And but yeah, it would have been great, you know, on the show that I did, if Zatanna was going to be brought into that at the end of like season 1, if it had gone on or something. And that relationship, I think, in the comics is one of my favorite relationships that John has. And I know she's more powerful than him in lots of ways. Although I think John's sneaky enough that I don't think, you know, he'll get around anyone really. But the fact that there's a real like relationship between the two of them, and John is someone who struggles with close relationships, is a real kind of, it's a wonderful conflict to play, you know. And yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Real quick, so you spoke of Tom Ellis, that scene in Crisis. How did that come about, and what kind of fun was that working with Tom?
You know, all the Arrowverse had done like crossovers for forever, and I'd never been involved in one. And Mark Guggenheim came onto the set of Legends one day and sat backstage and was talking to all the guys about what's going to be going on. And they went, Matt, read this. And it was the scene. There's only one scene. He was like, we got Tom. I was like, yes, man. And I've known Tom for years, you know. He's originally from Wales as well, but brought up in England. And I just thought it was a great scene. And we know each other so well, we started improvising in the scene. Like, I called him Lucy. He called me Constantine. And then, we started like just jamming off each other. And then we were like, wouldn't it be a great idea if we did like a Constantine versus Lucifer? Lucifer loses his powers and they have to take a road trip across America in an old sports car. They love each other. They hate each other, just 6 episodes, That would have been really cool.
I'd watch that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Sir.
First of all, thanks for coming today, Matt. We really appreciate you coming to Connecticut and to Terrificon. And I really loved your interpretation of Constantine, and it is clear from the panel today and from your performance that you actually enjoy and love the character. But my question is, what is your current nerd culture hot take? Like for me, it's that Batman is just an abusive cop and Joker and Harley are just trying to have a great time. What is your nerd culture hot take?
Nerd culture hot take? I don't really understand. What do you mean in terms of...
Like, if everyone believes something about Superman, but you believe the opposite.
Oh, okay. I don't know. That's a good question, dude. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, so then my backup question will be based off the last young lady.
Yeah.
You did get to play against Zatanna on the animated series.
Yes.
Can you talk to us about that experience and that voice actor that you worked with?
Yeah, well, it's funny when you do the voice stuff, you're never in the room with anyone. It's just you, But when I read the script, the multiple scripts that I did of all those movies, and that Zatanna was involved, and Deadman and Batman and all those, it was just great. And the funny thing is as well, as an actor, sometimes it's hard to watch yourself, right? It's just like, I don't want to watch myself in that, But with the animated movies, I can watch them and enjoy them a lot more. And I feel like you can do so much more in the animated movies. Like Constantine City of Demons, that was pretty R-rated. He swore in it. There was sex. There was all this stuff that we would have loved to have kind of put into the live action stuff. But I really loved the way that they handled that, and the fact that I got to play out that relationship in a different medium as well with Zatanna. It was great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Thank you,
I'm going to
Matt.
be thinking about that question all day now, so maybe come and see me later.
I'll be here all weekend. We'll work on that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
Hey, Batman.
So everybody knows you for your role as Constantine. I want to know, how did you get the role as Edward Kenway?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing about that was I got a call from my agent saying there's a role, there's an audition for a role in a TV show about pirates. And I was like, yeah, I love pirates. I always love pirates. So I went for the audition, and the character was from England, and from the north of England, so he had a real northern accent. Not too dissimilar to John Constantine's, just more north. And so I thought it was a television show. And I went in and I did the audition, and then about a week later, my agent called me and said, look, they really like you. They'd like to see you again. Will you go back in? But here's the thing. It's not a television show. It's a video game. I was like, okay. And they said it's called Assassin's Creed. And I had played the first Assassin's Creed years and years ago. So I knew about the franchise. I was like, that's awesome, And so I went through the process of the audition process with the casting directors with this northern accent. And I got the job, and I flew over to Montreal, do the motion capture and everything. And the guys were like, whoa, you've got a different accent. And I was like, yeah, well, actually, I'm from Wales, but I was doing a Northern England accent for the audition. And they turned around and said, oh, Wales, we like your accent. Is Wales near the sea? Is the place you're from near the sea? And I'm from a city called Swansea. And I was like, yeah, it's a port and it's close to the ocean. They're like, well, let's make him from Swansea. And nobody in the world knows where Swansea is. So I was like, whoa, I just put my home city on the map. This is pretty cool. Yeah, it was really, really cool. Hey.
Hello. So you mentioned that the animated movies that you did as Constantine gave you an option to interact with some DC characters that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise. I'm just kind of curious about like what DC characters that you didn't get to interact with as Constantine, especially like characters that he might have had like a relationship with in the comics of some kind, that you would like to still.
I always thought I wondered what it would be like if Constantine crossed over like with the Joker.
Oh God.
My brain does that when, because the Joker's quite a trickster, isn't he? And he's wild. I always thought that would be interesting if I don't know. Is there a comic or anything where Constantine crosses over with the Joker? I don't think I've ever seen that. I'm sure there's got to be. I mean, like the interaction with Superman as well in Justice League Apocalypse War, and Wonder Woman. I love the way that when he interacts with them, he just calls them like the tights. I like you guys in tights. Do you know what I mean? And takes the Mickey out of all of the soups then, because they're all wearing these ridiculous outfits and costumes and stuff. Yeah. But I would have loved to have seen on the TV show. I'd love to have seen interaction with Swamp Thing, and because that's where he was born. And the Swamp Thing, the TV show, was actually around as well. And I was like, come on, and that got cancelled. I was like, maybe they can bring him onto Legends and do something because, Legends being the place where all the reject characters go, and get a new life. But they didn't. But I think, because that's where he was birthed really in the comics, it would have been great to have some kind of interaction between him on either my show or Legends.
Yeah, I'm a big Books of Magic fan with Timothy Hunter. I love watching Constantine be like a terrible mentor to him. Yeah.
He is a terrible mentor, isn't he? But he's great as well because I don't know. There's so much he's such a kind of dichotomy of a character because he's good but he's not good. He's a good mentor but he's not a good mentor. He's such a paradox, and that's what I love about him as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
There's a lot of DC people here. You can mention your Joker Constantine crossover to them. Maybe it can happen.
Maybe they'll do a comic or something.
Absolutely. It'd be wonderful.
There he is.
We got all kinds of laughter.
Hi. I had one or two questions. I hope that's okay with everybody. I don't want to monopolize. The first one is, obviously, I'm a huge fan of yours, but I also know that Keanu Reeves is kind of a cult favorite. Have you and Keanu talked to, I know he's trying to do another Constantine, follow up his. He was here, so I didn't know if you two kind of did that, John, and just... Have you guys chatted? Did you guys compare notes?
No, I unfortunately didn't get a chance to meet him, and I'm a huge fan of his. Obviously, over the years, all the great movies he's done, and no, I didn't get a chance. It would be great to do some kind of crossover. I don't know if he even knows that there was a television show that was made, but but and also people, I see that I loved the movie when it came out, and then I read the comics. I was like, oh, it's a different interpretation, So I never felt the kind of in any way that they were in competition. And for me, the objective was to take the comics and just like delve into that. So even though I'd seen the movie before, I didn't rewatch the movie when we started because I wanted to be as true as possible to the comics. But I think there's one issue of a comic where there's a panel and they've got like 3 or 4 different Constantine faces, and one looks like Keanu and one looks like me, and that was pretty cool. Yeah, but I hear he's doing. I think they're doing. I've heard those rumors too, and I look forward to seeing that as well. And hopefully they get to do it. I read somewhere that originally they wanted to make it R-rated, but then they went to do the PG-13, but then they R-rated it anyway. And if they knew that they were going for that, they would have gone further. So I hope that they get to really kind of fulfill the vision of him and the director, and I look forward to seeing it. Yeah.
And the other question I had was that you had in your show you had a Chaz. You had your
Yes.
yeah, which was great because that relationship is oddly enough one of John's longest. 'Cause everyone else dies.
Yeah.
Chaz somehow remains.
Yeah.
Which kind of made you brought up City of Demons, right, with Jim DeMatteis, which that relationship is really tragic. So
Yeah.
what was that like? Bringing that relationship to life and working on and stuff.
Yeah, it was great. I found it like after reading the comics, you always have to kind of like, meet kind of, get your head into the space of what adaptation it is you're trying to do. Because, in our version, Chaz was American, and Astra as well, who came onto the show. Came onto Legends, was American as well, and I was like, but if John's from the UK, how is Chaz? How do they have the same relationship if he's American? And getting your head around those things, but ultimately it's about that relationship, And I love that they made him that he couldn't die as well, because as you said, somehow it's like everyone around John dies, but Chaz is always around. He's his oldest friend, and Charles, who played him. Charles Halford is just such a wonderful actor and such a giving human being that relationship really worked as us as people, which then kind of transferred into the show. So it was really cool to kind of get to play that out. And as I said, for me, the episodes where John was personally involved, when he had some personal stakes in the game, were the ones that really worked. And I think that's where the comic books work, when they were just like another demon of the week. I don't think that, I feel like I didn't connect as much to it. And I was always always felt that the ones when he's got some, some skin in the game and it really matters to him were the best.
Well, the brief last question is I feel a little odd because I'm you, and then I had John over here and Joan behind me.
Yeah.
So, I also kind of used to do it for a while. What is it like when you meet cosplayers and we're dressed and we're like, John, and like, hey, like, how is that when we're like,
it's really fun, man. When we launched the TV show, we were shooting in Atlanta, and they do that crazy thing for San Diego Comic-Con where they're like, right, you're jumping on a plane, you're flying in, and you're in the middle of like working, right? You're not even thinking about doing like press or promotion stuff. And I flew in, they had this big, huge Constanteen dome with my face on buses, and then like about 100 Constanteens all standing around. I was like, whoa, okay, all right, this is and that was really cool. And I find like, when you bump into John's or Joanna's or whatever, it's always really cool. And I always think, it's actually a really like easy cosplay costume as well. And also when I was on Legends and on my show, it's great because he only wears one costume. Yep. So, on network television, everything's really fast. You work long hours in the day, and with Legends, they're time traveling. So each episode, they've got to go and have costume fittings and all that stuff. John, nah, just stick on the same costume and away you go. I even got down to, I had the sound guys wire my tie with a microphone. So I didn't even have to go to see the sound guys to get the microphone, It was already in my tie. And it's not because I was being lazy, it was because I was trying to be efficient. But I love the fact that, he only wears one thing. And, you just imagine his closet all lined up, like with white shirts, red ties, and trench coats. But what's funny as well is because I have dark hair now and I look quite different, me and Mark there, we'll be walking around these things sometimes, and there'll be someone in a John Constantine outfit, and I'll say, "Oh, hey, John." They'll just go, "Oh, hey." wait, and I'm gone. It's just like, and it's funny because they don't really recognize me, so that's cool.
All right, thank you, man.
Cool, cheers.
So we have about 5 minutes left, so we got 2 questions, so let's burn through them.
Hi.
Hi. So you know why we're all here, but what are you currently geeking out over? What show, video game, book?
I'm a huge soccer fan. So I play FIFA on as video games. So I'm like, and the new football season just started. So I'm just like freaking out about that and the new FIFA game that's coming. And my team won yesterday, so that's cool. That's great. I was like, yes. Yeah. So that, and I'm actually reading a book at the moment called Consider Phlebas, which is by a British sci-fi writer called Iain M. Banks. And they're part of about 8 8 books or something, or the culture novels. And years ago, I think I read one of the books out of context and really liked it. And so now I'm going back to the beginning, and I really like that. I really like sci-fi. I really enjoy sci-fi as, you know, for my personal pleasure. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can really lose yourself in that. So yeah, that's the moment.
Cool. I love it. And then my other quick question was, of all the episodes you did on Legends, did you have one that was like your absolute favorite? You would watch that one on your own?
There's one scene, so I think it's season 6, when he becomes like the addict. There's a couple of scenes in there with Tala Ash, Zari character, that I loved working with her. There's a couple of scenes in there that I think it's one of the last couple of episodes of season 6. And then there's the bit when he's about to die, and then he comes back to life, and he's running around. He's talking to Gary and Ray. That whole episode I really enjoyed doing, because they were bringing in the dangerous habits, lung cancer arc, but albeit in a different way. And then there's one scene when bad John kicks the ass out of good John, and I'm fighting myself, throwing myself around. And the director who did that, like, he really tried to shoot it like a movie, so it wasn't like multiple camera setup. It was one camera, one at a time, and he really went for like a little bit of the blood, you know, you could see the blood, and it was gory for Legends, you know. And I really liked that he kind of like really lent into that, because we knew at that point we weren't allowed to use the character in the season after that. So I was like, man, just give me a few things, right? One, don't let him go off this show being good. Because with John, that season, he was like in love. And I can remember some of the fans in the background saying, this isn't John Constantine. And I was like, yeah, but sometimes you have to build that to break it. And I was like, he has to fall. He has to let someone down. Someone has to die because of him. So let that happen. Don't let him go out a good guy. And then there's another thing that I wanted, where there's a panel in one of the comic books when he's walking down a street, and there's a street lamp, and there's a puff of smoke coming from him, and it says, "Good night, kids, see you later," or something like that. And I was like, you got to end with me just walking off into the distance with the puff of smoke, you know, because at that time on Legends we were not allowed to smoke as well. So I was just like, just give me the puff of smoke. And then the other one was, I said, please, just once while I play John Constantine, let me do the bird. But they didn't give me that one on the CW, so yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Cheers.
All right, and our final question, no pressure.
That's all good.
Amen.
This is going to be a real quick question. It's also going to be the stupidest one you get today. So there's several writers for Hellblazer, Alan Moore, Garth Ennis, that have claimed they have met John Constantine in real life. So have you met John Constantine in real life?
Every time I look in the mirror.
Awesome, thank you. Now, before we go, any projects that you have in the works or plays
Nothing
that
I can talk about really, although I probably will spill the beans sometime this weekend. But not really. But something exciting will be coming, but not until next year. You know, and I don't know when it will come out. But yeah. I can't really talk about it.
NDAs are, you know, unnecessary.
And I'm
evil.
terrible, like, because I end up like just telling anyway, and then I get in trouble, and so I'm trying to be good.
Yeah, we don't want to get you in trouble.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for spending this time with us. Thank you all for being here. Give them a nice round of applause. Hey,